Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, February the 18th, 2026, and today we are checking in again with our friends Mikey and Kez down there at Five Tails Farm in Australia to see how the season has treated them so far, because keep in mind, they are still growing a ton of food right now. February is basically their August to us up here in the Northern Hemisphere, so although things are winding down there, they are also still cranking, and we chat about that and also why they grow what they grow, like how they figure out what makes sense for them, and they also bring along a little surprise topic to ask me at the end, so let's do it. Mikey, welcome back to the podcast. Great to see you again.
Great to be here, mate. Lovely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun because we haven't talked probably really since you've been in peak season. I mean, we talked back in like December, early December, but it's been like you all are really rocking and rolling right now. So maybe catch us up. Where are you all in your season right now, and how has the season been so far?
Yeah, so we're at the kind of peak. So I think for you guys, it's obviously, I'm trying to do the calculation for you guys, it's August.
Yeah,
it'll be August time. So kind of the last month of formal summer. And yeah, it's like it's that feeling that everyone's having. We were just saying before, like it's that time where there's still a lot to go. Like early autumn, crops are still pumping. You're getting tired because you've been pushing hard for a couple months, and it's also where the crops start to get tired because they've been, tomatoes have been in the ground for months and months and months. They've been heaving out fruit, and everything's starting to kind of, it's over that. It's coming over the crest, but I guess what's hard is that our job is to keep pushing on. Like us, we have to find the energy, and you also, like, there's still another 2 months of tomatoes for us. So we're going to make sure those crops can keep pushing on for the next few months.
Yeah. That's funny. I always think of August too, as like, it has this, here in Kentucky at least, it has this like staleness to it. Like it has like the grass is starting to look stale and senesce, and like a lot of the stuff when we do the living pathways, like a lot of that stuff's trying to go to seed. August is like, it feels like summer's last like throw. It's like just going all in. Is that sort of how it feels for you all?
Yeah, 100%. The thing, exactly, you get this feeling of it, but the thing is you still got to hold on. Like there's still so much produce of peak summer that you need to move, because like a lot of us, that's where a large chunk of your profitability is, like your gross income, your profitability is in those few months. So I think that's what we're kind of, I'm looking at the farm and I'm walking around, and there's a new succession of this starting, and I walk through the tomatoes, and I'm looking at the fruit sets coming up and being like, okay, how long can we push that for? How long is it going to get for? So yeah, we're in that stage, and it's like, how do you hold it all together and hold it really strongly and firmly? But at the same time, we're about to start planting all the crops for, the winter crops are getting in the ground and open. So we've got radicchios being planted outside, the autumn kales and collards. So it's just, there's a lot going on.
I think the other thing I think of with August is it's like the just keep planting month. It's that month where you just have that mantra of like, just get it in the ground, just go, just keep going, and you won't regret it later. But like, I know it's hard. I know it's hot. I know you don't feel like it, but like, you got to keep going, keep getting it in there.
Yeah, that's it. You're going to kind of dig deep. So yeah, so that's essentially, that's where we are in the season. And I was kind of pondering before jumping on, kind of like a couple of successes and a couple of challenges, I guess, for the season. And I guess we'll start with some of the successes. Kez has just joined in. Here she is.
Hey, Kez.
So I guess a couple of the big successes, which is cool because we spoke about the grafting, is I think the grafting has been a mad success for us this season so far. Absolutely pumping. So I think numerically we doubled the number of plants, but I think in terms of the yield so far, I think our yield is probably 3 times what it was. So we're definitely seeing a lot more, like better yield, and also crop health. Like we were saying before, it's that crunch time peak of season, and crops, they're looking overall really good. They've still got a largely vegetative kind of habit going on. They haven't looked like they're really, they're pushing to the end, but there's still good fruit set. Not too much disease or pest pressures at all. So very big success. And I think it's been also really helped us to kind of hit some of the the numbers that we're seeing this season. So above what we forecasted, which is always really nice. Correct.
And then are with those tomatoes, are you side dressing them? And what's your approach there?
No, not side dressing. Most of our program is foliar feeding.
Okay.
As well as fertigating fish. So
Yeah, we do a fish hydrolysate a number of times throughout the season, but our setup for fertigation isn't crash hot, and we're finding it a bit of a challenge getting precise dosage and also just doing it in an effective way. So we're looking into the future. How can we buy a setup that serves us better? So at the moment, it's a lot of foliar sprays, which are really effective, but the problem with it is just the labor cost. There's a lot of spraying to do.
And it's something that we always have to do kind of at the end of the day when temperatures are low, and it always gets postponed. Mikey will talk a little bit about staffing, and should I jump onto that now if we're already on the topic? Or
Okay.
No, sorry, carry on. I don't want to...
That's all good. So I guess that's how we're managing it. So at the moment, it's just, I think the problem with the foliar as well is it's a band-aid solution. So you're kind of like we're topping up the crops with the nutrition, but you've kind of got to do it once every fortnight or every 3 weeks to make sure they're getting propped up. So the long-term fertility, we'll build that plan for next year, but the program we wrote for the crop beforehand has proved to be, I think, quite successful. I think so. We can say.
Mm-hmm. With the foliar spraying, are you doing like a sap analysis and then guiding the foliar spray off that, or are you using kind of a general foliar spray? Like what's your approach there?
Yeah, much more like a general one, and that's just because I was planning on doing leaf analysis this season, and it ran away from me. This is the second year in a row that it's run away from me, and it's not cool in a sense because I know it needs to guide my nutrition plan a lot more, but essentially just based upon
our soil testing, and also just constantly looking at the plants and knowing to recognize certain deficiencies already by leaf coloring or stuff like that.
But like it's not good to be reactive, and I think a part of the proactive part of the foliar program is that, for example, the last few years we've been documenting some of the issues that have been coming up, and trying to build a program around keeping those plants with the best levels that they can get, so we don't see those drops in nutrition. So a lot of it's been, we build a program and have just been following the program, being, I know that tomatoes need a lot of calcium. They need a lot of potassium throughout the season. I know my plants struggle with magnesium at the beginning of the season, so I've made sure I hit them quite hard and kept them really propped up with magnesium in the beginning of the season. And then, as the plant started flowering, a nice dose of boron. And it's a similar way. So like peak season, what we're saying now, I've got fruit sets, and even the flowers that have been pollinated now, be another month and a half, 2 months, and we'll have those fruits. So I still have to make sure that the plant is getting the appropriate amount of those nutrients now, because the fruit load we have is pulling everything from the plant that it's got. So I need to make sure it's got luxury levels so that we keep that yield as high as we can.
And Kez had mentioned like staffing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's what we wrote down as a bit of a challenge that we're approaching this summer, is that the farm kind of stayed the same size. We've obviously added the satellite farm at Jay's place, which is a small plot, but we've doubled our tomato production with the new tunnel that we built, and I think we just didn't realize the amount of labor that's gonna draw as an extra to what we were used to last year. So between like making sure that nutrition is high, so obviously spraying has been taking a big chunk of our time, leaf pruning, the structure is really high up, so we have to go up on ladders for lowering and leaning. So it's basically like every second week twisting and pruning, and then every second week leaf pruning and lower and leaning. It's just a lot of work. Also just harvesting. I mean, we've been harvesting like a ton, 800 to a ton of tomatoes weekly. Like that is a lot of tomatoes to move, and I think it's a mix between not having enough staff to do that regularly, and then things like the sap analysis or are getting away from you, or just really being consistent on the foliar spray. And also not yet having all the nice infrastructure, having proper trolleys, for example, or having ready crates that are just allocated for tomatoes, or even having a cool room space to store them in. At the moment, we bought a refrigerated truck for our deliveries that also acts as our 12 degrees Celsius cool room for the Tommies, because we have such a huge volume. You know, back in the day we used to store them in our house in a cool room. Like, you can't do that anymore. We have so much. So just all sorts of stuff like that, you know, if we had a proper cool room that we can just put the tomatoes, but now
there's a lot of double handling.
And just a lot of labor regarding this. I mean, it definitely pays off. And we've been talking about it, that it's so nice to see a crop that you can see the profitability in it. You know, you put a lot of effort in and you get a lot of return, which is really nice. But you can see why the fancy greenhouses, you know, are on concrete and they're all fertigated. Like, it's a crop that needs a lot of attention and a lot of work.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. And pruning, I think, is one of those things that really can catch you off guard, just how long it takes to do it well. And I mean, that's definitely been a time suck, labor suck for us as well. With the trellises, you said you were getting up on ladders. Are you using just like a hook, sort of a tomahawk system, or like what's the sort of system that you're using for trellising those tomatoes?
We're using tomahawks at the moment. We do have a little bit of the clipper system. It's just so expensive that we can't justify even for labor cost. We are looking and changing maybe into the rollers. Or maybe trying to fabricate our own clippers, because at the end of the day it's not such a big deal. But yeah, we're using the tomahawks at the moment.
Yeah, those clippers are not cheap. And in some ways, like I think it's nice to be able to stand there and use them. We have clippers. But I kind of wish my clipper system was actually just an elongated version of the tomahawk, where I could just flip the whole thing over and stick it back up instead of using those little clips. You know what I mean? Like, I don't love those little clips. I just, they're kind of a pain. I drop them. Like, I don't know. I have to keep track of them. I have a bag on my hip. It's just I don't know. It's a good system. But it's not it's not my favorite. I think there's all these systems, always can use improvement, but that's where I always go. I want just one giant tomahawk is what I want.
Yeah. It is what it is. It's a part of growing the crop. Hey, you just got to try to work out the most efficient ways of managing it. Yeah, so our trellis bar is three meters up, so definitely up ladders. It's a lot of up and down. So we try to work out how do we minimize dropping it, but we have to drop the plants down probably every 3 weeks once they hit the
2 weeks probably.
Yeah, 2 weeks once they hit the bar.
Yeah, luckily you're headed into the season where that slows down a little bit, but
yes,
yeah, that vegetative growth.
We have 3 more weeks before we top them.
Yeah, 3 weeks and then we top them.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
3 more weeks and then we top them, and then 60 days and they're out.
Yeah,
it's just ridiculous. It's so short.
Yeah, like Mikey and I started the conversation talking about just August in general, and headed into September for us would be the equivalent of you right now. And how that can be like a really just quick turn from like you're going peak full out and then all of a sudden it kind of breaks. And it's sort of like a fever, like it just snaps off at some point. And I
keep reminding myself not to like say, I'll just push those autumn successions. It's so hot. You know, I'll just sow them a week later. I'll just plant them a week later. You know, I always try to remind myself this time of year that no, this is the time to put them in the ground, even though it's hot and even though you're not, you know, expecting it to necessarily change. Which I think every year we do a bit, and currently doing that now, but telling myself not to do it at the same time.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about deciding which crops to grow. BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Certified Naturally Grown. Certified Naturally Grown is the grassroots certification built by farmers for farmers. C&G gives local growers like you recognition for the commitment of producing food without synthetic chemicals by assuring customers that your practices are verified. C&G's peer review inspection model keeps the cost of certification low while creating opportunities for knowledge sharing amongst a strong, supportive network of like-minded farmers. Apply today to be certified before the season ramps up. Applications processed within 7 days. Learn more at naturallygrown.org. All right, back to the show. All right, so something I'm always curious about with any farm is just kind of like what goes into deciding what your farm is going to grow, like what you're producing. So can you talk a little bit about that calculus? Like, how do you arrive at, for instance, the tomatoes, but also, like, I know you all grow a lot of zucchini. Like, maybe talk about some of these crops you've sort of decided these are the crops that work in our system or for our farm.
Beautiful. I think a couple of things spring to mind when we're choosing a crop, and sometimes it actually has less to do with the crop itself, but who's going to be buying the crop, which we've spoken about before. Because I think the reality is there are some crops which could be incredibly profitable to you just because you have a buyer that will take it in a certain volume and a certain frequency and consistency. And a price. So a lot of the time when we're sitting down and working out what we're going to be growing, when we're going to be growing it, and who's going to be buying it, that often dictates the crops we choose. And I think that's kind of the starting point for a lot of them is who's buying it, and what the partner is, and do we have consistency? And I know before you were mentioning about zucchinis, for example. Zucchinis for us is an incredibly reliable crop. Once they're producing every single week, 2, 3 times, 4 times a week, you're going in, you're harvesting. Doesn't matter if there's a heat wave coming, they will keep producing. And as long as Kez and I know that we have an outlet for it, that crop will be sold. That for us is already a really great start to whether that's going to be a crop we grow and whether it's going to be profitable. I think after that, the kind of the nuts and bolts of breaking down labor costs to yield and income, that's kind of obviously a part of the piece. It's super important, but that is a primary thing. If you find a market that is really strong, that's a great starting point.
Yeah.
So like in our current context, and we've spoken about in the past, we have 2 really reliable wholesalers, high-end wholesalers that pay a higher price than usual per a few crops. And usually our main crops in the season are crops that we know we could move volume through them. And then because they're still like high-end wholesalers that still service the restaurant community, they're often interested in crops that our direct customers are interested as well. But the fact that we know that we could move that volume to them no matter what, that's kind of our baseline. And then on top of that, we obviously get the direct sales, which is great. And the more we get direct sales, the better. But we choose our crops, the main crops, the really bread and butter, is if we could move them in a good price and good volume wholesale. And then it trickles down, if it makes sense. And then we choose a few like fun crops that we want to offer only our, direct customers. And that would be eggplants, a few interesting heirloom chilies, ground cherries, all sorts of like perilla, interesting stuff that we kind of put in there. And to be honest, because they're like unique, the wholesalers usually jump on them as well. But that's kind of like the baseline. So zucchinis, yes, it may not be, the same price as tomatoes per kilo, but it is incredibly reliable, and it is such a baseline for us from November till March, which is pretty huge.
It's funny, you kind of mentioned something there that stuck out to me was, getting a decent price for it wholesale, because the reality is like the price that you can get at market for zucchini, is not great, but it's actually not that different from what we can get for wholesale. So like some crops, it's like the wholesale expectations are really low, but the retail expectations, like you can get a decent price for it. Does that make sense? So sometimes like when those numbers are really close together, growing the wholesale makes sense because you can grow large amounts of it and sell large amounts of it. So like it gets closer to your retail number. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I think exactly. Sometimes there's a stigma around not like wholesale accounts or not getting the full price. But often, even, if it's a couple of dollars here and there, but you can get volumes that are, 10x what you'd be selling at, at a farmer's market, then the profitability is potentially there if you can make those numbers work. So that definitely factors in a huge amount into those crops that we're choosing. And there's always standout crops. When you run the numbers backwards and work out, as I said, the labor units for picking, for packaging, for processing, you have to run all those numbers. But that also comes back to, again, classic as a zucchini one. You pick it, you put it in a box, and you're sold. Mm-hmm. It's a very easy one to be selling in large volumes. We basically pick directly into lined crates. They then go into the cool room and get dispatched. There's no that's the process. Very minimal, and it's sold, as opposed to something else like, salad mix, which might be more profitable, at the end of the day. But if you look at the processing time in it, it really does eat away at the overall profitability.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect of it. I hadn't thought about just the ease of, harvesting that straight into a box and selling it. That makes a ton of sense. Are there other crops like that, like zucchini, or just other crops that you've maybe beyond tomatoes and zucchini that have sort of fit into that system that you're like into that sort of calculus for you?
Well, I think there are some other crops which are maybe slightly more niche, but we can't sell in the high volumes. But we often do like to look for crops like that you can pick and pack and process straight away. Some of the accounts, they do demand packaging, and then there's stickering on it. For example, we grow, which a lot of people do, shishito or padron peppers. The per kilo for it's pretty good. The harvest time is not too bad at all. So if we can grow them in volume, it's picking straight into a crate and then it gets sold. The problem is when you start to find yourself in the scenario where you have to start packaging and stickering, that eats away at your profitability. So then we kind of say to ourselves, okay, can I find a market that will simply take it? Maybe it's slightly, a larger volume for a lesser price, but it's actually just a lot easier for us to move that volume rather than, small amounts here and there for a higher dollar value. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I think one thing that's standing out to me in this conversation is just one of the things that you hear from a lot of farms, including ours, is that the wash pack station is a huge bottleneck, and it takes up so much time in general, even if it's profitable. So it limits what you can do. And kind of one of the things that you've sort of landed on is like, just get rid of the wash pack, like get it straight, grow more of these crops that maybe don't make as much money, but don't suck your time into standing there, washing, packing, labeling, all the things that are required on the back end.
For sure. And even the stuff that does get, processed, we're certified. We're certified under certain, health regulations and organizations. So we do a lot of focused packaging. But again, even something like a salad, for us for a long time we were chasing a higher return on it. We were bagging it and we were selling it off and being like, oh, pretty chuffed by the per kilo price. And then at some point starting to find buyers who will be taking 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 kilos a week, and it gets washed and it gets put 3 kilos into a crate, packed in the fridge, and even that just cuts out hours of work. So we found that to be, it might have been $5 or $6 less a kilo, $7 less a kilo, but it's that much easier to be packing and selling, and it gets people back out in the field picking and harvesting and processing other crops, that it just becomes worthwhile us focusing on those partnerships.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and then we may dive in a little bit more into that idea of like these crops that don't necessarily fit that system. Be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Tend. Farming is hard, running it shouldn't be. Meet Tend, the purpose-built platform built by farmers for farmers. Plan your season, map your farm, and track every task from seed to sale. No more spreadsheets, no more guesswork, just smart, seamless workflows. Tend adapts to your farm, 1 acre or 100. Real-time inventory, sales, labor, tracking, traceability, and analytics all in one place. You grow food, flowers, fruit, and more. Tend helps you to grow smarter. Start free today at tend.com. That's TEND.com. All right, back to the show. All right, so we talked a little bit about a few crops that did work in the system, and even a little bit about crops that maybe don't, like you were talking about the lettuce mix. Is there other stuff that sort of stands out in that vein that doesn't necessarily fit?
That doesn't fit for us. What jumps out that doesn't fit for us? As I said, I'm trying to reduce bag stuff. Like I want to move more away from the bagging stuff. Like obviously the big companies that are doing it, they have it mechanized, and it makes so much sense rather than paying a worker to be bagging things and tying it. And so I think in my head, just in terms of our outlets, is to be moving less away from those sort of units. And I'm trying to think of any other ones. The truth is also a lot of other small things, like Kez was saying before, like, I send a weekly fresh list out to all the restaurants, and it's quite an elaborate list. But when I look at our income, at the end of the year, and the crops that are making us, 80% of our income is coming classically from 20% of the crops. Yeah. So I think each year we're culling more and more crops, and I think that'll be a process next year, simply just to be simplifying our lists. And there's a couple of lines that we were offering to wholesalers, like Kez was saying, they were interested, whether it's a Perilla, or whether it's a Zata or a Greek oregano. And I think it's just taking up room in the field and doesn't return the amount of money it needs to for real estate. And we're just going to be hardcore and be like, it's not a part of the system, because we're a small farm and everything needs to be paying its way. Otherwise we just make less of a living, and that's not on.
Yeah. I think the way that we view the wash pack shed is a thing that we need to make more efficient, instead of the way that we view our crop list as what determines what happens in the wash pack. Does that make sense? So instead of necessarily so what a lot of us are doing is how do we make the wash pack a more efficient thing? And kind of what you're saying is how do we grow crops where they don't need a wash pack as much, or don't need, is quite as much attention on the back end?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, classically, tomatoes are incredible. You harvest them into the box that they get dispatched in, and they have the highest per kilo price that we can get. So it harvests, it goes into the cool room, it gets dispatched. Incredible.
Yeah.
Can I make a disclaimer?
Go.
Sorry, I'm back. Raya woke up, so I'm monitoring, but
no worries.
Hopefully she stays asleep. But I just listened from the bedroom, and I think I do want, we are a quite unique scenario where we are a small farm, but we sell a lot to wholesalers. And I think I really want to make the point that we have a very unique relationship with a very unique wholesaler that has a high price point and has a very good relationship with us, where they're very committed. So I have a lot of security in that relationship and in that account. And I think that is a very unique scenario that allows us to kind of go so much that way. And I also think that in our business, we completely said that it's super important to have those direct sales, that we have the full dollar for, that we do need that variety of those random crops that we're just they're not really paying their real estate, but they're adding to our portfolio. And this year, getting more accounts that are direct and full dollar has made a huge difference for us. And also the thing with working with wholesalers is that they're constantly pushing you for more volume, which pushes you constantly to grow, which we don't want to and we can't. So that's also creating this struggle of, we're not meeting supply. We're not meeting supply. And that's great that there's so much demand, but that's also for a lower price. And I think I just want to, I'm not sure that pushing towards wholesaler is a solution for everyone. I think it is customer specific, and we're very lucky to have a really good relationship, but I just want to be careful with that. That's all, because our movement is still built on the full dollar, and I think that makes a big difference.
I couldn't agree more. I think in this conversation is talking from context, and that's the context that we're sharing from our reality. I couldn't agree more with you, but I think that's
okay. I just don't want people listening out there and just wholesalers. And
no. I guess all we can do is speak from the context that makes sense for us. I have no idea the business down the road. The decisions they make to remove a crop, to grow like this, that's their decision, But for us, that has been the push for us to make certain decisions that works for us for profitability's sake, for labour sakes, and the fact that we're a very compact farm. It's very small.
Yeah,
I think and also our personal decision of not wanting to be a logistical business. So we didn't want to work with gazillion restaurants because we value our time, and we didn't want you as a young family to be out delivering all day. So wholesale made more sense for our current,
Absolutely.
We have a 1-year-old, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It sort of is the same thing like the wash pack, where you're reducing, that labor on the back end, in this case, having a bunch of different customers that you have to communicate with. I know that, even having a handful of chefs that you have to text, and you're they're not texting you back. You got to keep track of who hasn't communicated what their order is that week or whatever. That's a lot. It can take up a lot of time, and a lot of just sitting there on your phone trying to get things to work. So if you have a wholesale account, and that takes some of that stress off, and it works for you. But yeah, like you all were saying, it's very context specific. But I love the approach. I think it's very cool.
Let's see if it works.
Okay. Yeah, fair. And Mikey, all right. So I know that you have sort of a surprise topic, so I want to hear it.
Okay, so part topic that I want to actually hear your thoughts on is we've been toying around. We're reading a couple of good business books, and this idea that came in one of the books was this idea of often as a business we're trying to raise the ceiling. Okay, where can we get to and what can we do? How can we get better in order to do X, Y, and Z? And in this book, he was proposing this idea of actually raising the floor.
Yeah.
Okay, and it really sat with me. What does it mean to raise the baseline of a business and the baseline of an operation? So what are our
non-negotiables?
What is our tolerance level for certain things that we may have tolerated before that I'm no longer going to tolerate in my business? This is the new baseline that we sit on and operate from.
Wait, give me an example of one that you've identified for you all.
Okay. Let's think. For example, crop loss. The number of, you talk to people and it might be peak season and it's summer. And for example, our lettuces, okay, our direct sowing in the peak season with irrigation and the temperatures, our baseline is in the summer. I was like, okay, we get worse germination and then the yield drops. And then I realized, and I said to myself that why do I tolerate that? I run a professional business. What if I lifted my baseline for peak season summer and said, I don't tolerate, my new tolerance is that even in peak summer, I want to have 100% of germination rate. What will it do to my business and what will it do to the people around me? So we've been working, okay, that's raising the baseline. And then what does enable me to then produce that crop? If my baseline is 100% germination, I've just increased my yield and I can then focus on a new challenge in the summer. So I don't think I have my head fully around it, but I've been playing with it and really liking the framing of the question.
And also having like a summer team and a bigger team over summer is also, so we've started to open that conversation with the team. How do we then raise what we expect from all of our team members to perform? Like, what is not, oh, good job. No, this is how we harvest. This is how we pack. This is how the wash pack looks at the end of the day, and holding everyone accountable to that and then lifting everyone's game accordingly. And having that mantra, like, we are a professional vegetable growing business. Every single kohlrabi that we sell needs to look like this, like $1 million. That is our baseline. That is our non-negotiable. And then, raising the ceiling or whatever, or dreaming big, or, smashing summer income goals. Or
A couple of things come to mind with that. And one of them is sports. So like in sports, we talk about like when a team has, we talk about their ceiling a lot of like how good could they be? But what we doesn't often get enough credit is like, what's their best when they're at their worst? So like, what is their floor? Like how high can they get their floor? How high is their floor? And I think that same thing sort of applies to farming in the sense that like, if you increase that floor, then your worst is still pretty high, right? Like a bad day, a bad year, a fire, a drought, or whatever. Like you've raised what the worst could be. Does that make sense? So like that's one area that my brain went. Another thing that went, like, I don't know that I've ever thought about this in terms of my like current business, but there have been things over the years that have become non-negotiables like that. So for instance, hours, like I'm not going to work at night. I'm just not. I'm like, I want to be with my kids. My kids are out of school or whatever. We're doing soccer or whatever. I don't care what happens to farm. Farm can just like burn. I don't care. Like for me, the non-negotiable is, for most of my non-negotiables, at least at this moment, are like family. Like that is just it. I would rather work super early in the morning and do this just to have that buffer than, have the farm like take away from those other things that I love doing or love being with my family and spending that time. So those are also non-negotiables, but like in a business sense, I don't know that I've like beyond the hours thing, like really restricting my hours. I don't know that I've really thought about it, but that's a good question. Maybe that's something we'll have to revisit in a future episode because I would have to think about like there are little things that I do, like I'm not getting up on ladders anymore when you said that was like, I'm not doing that anymore. Like I got the clipper system. It was expensive, but it was just, especially when I started asking like employees to do it. And we had one really tall employee and it felt a little risky, like I didn't like asking him to have to do that. And it felt like one of those things that I was like, I have to cut that out. So that's when we moved to the clipper system. And it was a big investment, but it did kind of address that a little bit. And yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about other ones, but I like that. Like it makes me sort of think about like what else I could create as a non-negotiable that would sort of raise that floor.
Yeah, I think it's a powerful thing. I think it could be really fun to come back because I think it's something that we're exploring consistently. But every now and then, just little shifts here and there that I've already seen in terms of myself trying to hold myself more accountable to different areas in the farm and also personal life. But just saying, Mikey, like recently, Kez probably noticed that my health and fitness, I've just been like, I'm a dad now, and Raya's just turned 1, and I need a baseline. Like I want to be fit and I want to be healthy, and what does baseline Mikey need to be, and I don't want to fall below that baseline, and so like I'm feeling really good by trying to hold myself accountable to that, and out on the farm doing all sorts of stuff, being like, put tools back, what's the Mikey that I want to be the baseline for, and then how much better can I be if I have a solid flooring. So it'd be fun to explore.
What's your take on that, Kez?
I think for me it was more creating the team we wanted to be, and I think because we were a bit understaffed for a second there and things felt really full on and things were falling, and we had a new team and we were not really like me and Mikey and Jay, our core team, I think we didn't have that floor. We didn't come into the season holding this really baseline that we're proud of. I think that was the key for me, to be proud of what we do. And then we got a new team, and I think for a second it really resonated with us because we felt like we needed to like stop and like regroup. And I think it really did. And I think it really got the team into the same mindset. And since we have a team meeting once a week where we discuss, after lunch, we sit down, we do a little check-in, and we talk about like ideas or stuff that are happening on the farm. And I really felt the atmosphere on the farm kind of shift when we introduced that idea. And when we weren't afraid to raise our expectations from ourselves, but also from our team members. Because we're and I think that's for a lot of farm, like we're a real tight team. Like we have lunch together every day, we spend all week together, and it's really hard, I think, sometimes to give feedback or to be a bit more harsh because we're so close together. And I feel by coming to it from that angle of we are all a team, we are all professional, this is what we want to be, this is how we want to be proud of ourselves, really managed to do that same effect, but from a really positive, like togetherness, rather than like, you need to do this, or you need to be quicker, or that wasn't good enough. And you can really see it, like the wash pack at the end of harvest is like, I can eat off that floor. And I'm really proud of that. It's just those small things, and it seeps through everyone. Everyone on the team feels that. And for me, that's what I really liked when Mikey brought that idea.
It sort of makes me think, I know it's not really the same thing, but the thing that came to mind is how Thomas Keller over at the French Laundry used to just pick up cigarette butts, like around the restaurant, just as like a thing that he would sort of encourage his staff to do too. Like just this idea of like, I don't know, looking at those little details, but having it be this baseline of what you're setting a precedent, I guess, of like what the standards are. But it's a really simple thing. I don't know. Mikey and Kez, I always enjoy our chats. You all are the best. I think I need to get off here so that you all can get some rest.
No, don't worry about it.
But thank you so much for coming on again.
Pleasure.
Yeah,
always love a chat.
Good fun. Awesome.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I love chatting with Mikey and Kez. I would do it every day if I could. Some of my favorite people, absolutely love their work. And please make sure to follow them over at the old Instagram, Five Tails Farm. We will make sure to put some links in the show notes. Otherwise, I think we are done here Wednesday. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, if you're like, I have a business, I really like that they just keep all this information free and open to anyone and everyone, you can send a message over to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. She will help you out gladly. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and also my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of February, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Sally and Andrew Ott. I feel like I knew some Otts growing up. Was it Oars? Or was it in the aughts? I don't remember. All right, so yes, back to our story with James, who is headed to his first rehearsal with the new band. He hasn't joined them yet, but truly feels like, what else is he doing right now with his lifetime of skills? So he packs his guitar and hops on the train out to a building he's never noticed before. James has practiced in some weird places, some weird like rehearsal spaces before, but this one certainly is the fanciest. It looks like an office building, but for maybe like Google or something. Like it's super high tech looking. There's all sorts of like, I don't know, lights, stuff. Clearly I know tech terminology. And anyway, he walks in and everyone says hi, greeting him warmly by his name, then going on about their business and, just kind of letting him go. At the reception area, a kind man offers James some tea or coffee, and James nervously asks for both, but the man laughs and says no problem and walks James to the studio where he'll be rehearsing, and he recognizes the rest of the band standing there, only they are not really like, they all have instruments, but they're really weird looking, and they're all wearing something looks like, I don't know, ski goggles or something. A few seconds later, the man returns to James with his 2 drinks and smiles. We're all very excited to hear the tunes, and James looks at him oddly, and he's like, What tunes? As the man walks away, one of the band members, though, waves James into the room, and that is for tomorrow on, wait, is this rock or is it roll? I don't know. I don't know if that's the title. We'll find out. Thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you then. Bye.